Good morning, good afternoon. How are we doing? Welcome. Thank you very much for joining me today on today's Insight webinar. For those of you who haven't met, my name's Stuart Bell. I'm a business coach, lover of practice management, somebody who works with advice businesses. I'm really glad to join you here today for this webinar. As part of what I get to do, I get to work with some fantastic planners over here in Australia. Usually planners who are interested in doing things differently. And I think that's probably the main thing that I'm really into. Whether that's technology or anything to do with disrupting what we do, that's kind of my thing. So if I'm meeting you for the first time, thank you so much for joining me here today. I guess the funny thing is when we talk about disruption, a lot of people think it's technology. It's always technology. But I think the biggest disruption when it comes to doing things differently kind of comes when we're talking about disruption in the way you think. And my guest tonight for this interview webinar, which is my favorite type of webinar, is Ronald Sier. And if you haven't met Ronald or you haven't read his stuff, frankly, you're in for a treat because, as you'd imagine, I get to read a lot of content from people around, sales and marketing, all the rest of it when it comes to advice businesses. And occasionally, you read a blog, you read a bit of information where it's super, super special stuff. It's just amazing. It brings out like a bell. And the first time I had the opportunity to read Ronald's blog, CB on Numbers, his writing, his thinking just struck out at me like an arrow out of the dark. So I think I read his thing about hot buttons, which was most amazing, and absolutely loved it. So since then, I reached out to him. We ended up having a really good chat, and I'm delighted that he's joining me here today to have a bit of a chat about how advisors who want to think differently, want to reinvent themselves, want to, I guess, bring advice forward can do that. And also, the second part, I'm really keen on this, is to have a bit of a conversation about building an online following, because that's essentially what Ronald's done over the past 4 years. He's built an amazing international following, and he's spoken all over the place, and I'd love to talk about that. But before we kick off, here's a confession. We're using a new bit of technology tonight. So we're giving it a whirl. Normally, they say you should test things in private before you work it out, but you know what? I thought we may as well run into the wall at full speed and just give this a whirl. So this is an interactive webinar. And what I would love is for you to have the opportunity to ask questions and really, ideally, sort of take over a bit of this webinar. So with in the interest of getting this started the way we'd like to continue, I want you to do me a favor. First thing, if you can hear me, see me, everything's kind of looking good, do me a favor, head over to that chat box. It should be in your browser, bottom right, I believe, and just type in, good to go, I'm hearing you, yippee, or whatever the Dutch equivalent is if you're in Holland, or whatever the American equivalent is if you're in the US or wherever you are. And that'll kind of let me know. Firstly, it's going to let me know if everything's working as intended. And secondly, it might give me a bit of an idea to how much delay we're working with here, because I reckon that's going to be one of the issues. So pop over there into the inbox and pop that in. And while you're thinking about that, you know what else you can do for me is have a think about what are the kind of questions that you might have today about doing things differently. I've got a yes from Hemant. Hemant, I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Elizabeth, now I've got my screen up. Elizabeth, welcome. Glenn, dude, thank you very much for joining us. Michael, Nina, Lee, how you going, man? Jitendra, Jitendra, thank you so much for joining us. Hemant, Scare, Benny's here. Ronald, I'm glad to see is here as well. Good to go from Nina, and Paul is here too. Hey, dudes, thank you so much for joining me. Hey, I think there's a bit of a delay here, but nonetheless, I'm going to rock on, and I'd love it if you could, keep the questions coming, because frankly, if it's all me, I think you'll get much more value from asking questions that you want to hear and hearing from Ronald. And with not a moment's delay, I'm really delighted to introduce you tonight to join us from Volendam. Ronald, are you there?
Can you hear me, Stuart?
I can hear you loud and clear, yes.
Okay.
Now, you were coming through really well for me, but what was happening is everybody else was getting bits and pieces. So let's do this at take two. We're running straight through the Crowdcast platform. Michael can hear me well. That seems much better, says Glenn.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've popped the link on to everybody else's. Hemant has joined us as well. So you know what? Let's just pretend that didn't happen, right? That was, that didn't happen. Everything's cool. let's rock on and continue what we're talking about. I think things started to go sort of pear-shaped when we started talking about the experience. So here's what I really want to know. You're writing a blog, you're putting stuff out there. You start to notice people are getting traction. Michael picks it up. What was the point at which you discovered that you might have something here that was speaking to a wider audience?
Well, the thing is, where it really got going is where I shared an ebook that I made out of a blog post, but it was actually that particular blog post which aligned with a lot of people. What wasn't out there at that moment, and that blog post was about financial goals. And what I was saying basically is that people do not have financial goals. And
no.
In the industry, it's all about financial goals. So, of course, we are trained to help people reach their financial goals. And when you check the big corporates marketing, it's all about helping people reach their financial goals. But when you ask people about what's your financial goals, what are your financial goals, they just look at me and say, financial goals, what do you mean?
Yeah.
So, and that post that really aligned with a lot of financial planners' view about financial planning, because I think most planners recognize what I'm saying is that, okay, we are doing the things to help people with their goals, but initially they do not have financial goals. So you have to help them to get goals. And so when you are marketing about financial goals, it just doesn't work, because when you see we help you to achieve your financial goals, then you think, financial goals, I don't have any financial goals. Yeah, I want to be a millionaire someday, but that's not a really clear and a legitimate goal, I think. So that was the post that sort of made it for me.
Right, perfect. And one of the posts that I loved is we've sort of spoken about this before, and people generally come to advisors because they've got a very specific problem, right?
Yeah.
Very few people wake up in the morning and go, suddenly I feel like I need a new financial advisor. That's a minimum of people. They come because of a problem. And I think one of the blogs that I loved and I really connected with was the hot buttons thing. And I want to ask you a couple of questions about this. The first one is I want to understand where that thinking, that research come from. And second thing I want you to explain to us is there was a really interesting strategy that you employed in that blog, which is where you talked about the 7 hot buttons.
Yeah.
And then you told us 6, and then you invited people to email you. And I'd love to know a bit about where you learned that and some of the content marketing strategies you've employed along the way.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I'm doing this, so basically what I'm doing over there is that people are engaged by reading the post, and at the end, I'm offering something extra value for free. The only thing that I'm asking is that they leave a comment to the question that I'm asking at the end of the post. And the reason why I do that is that, I do not have all the wisdom, but together we have more wisdom than just me. So the reason why I'm doing that is that we can learn from each other. So when you go to the blog, there's a lot of comments from questions that I'm asking, and the extra hot button was just a little bit of extra value as a gift for you for sharing your comment with me. And the post itself, the hot buttons itself, derives actually from a book. It's called Hot Button Marketing.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did is that what I'm always doing is that I'm trying to relate it to financial planning. And what we underestimate, I think, in our business is that we tend to be analytical about our profession, which is logical because we are educated in an analytical way. Our CFP program is about numbers, taxes, legislation, everything, and this piece is about behavioral change and sales and everything that's not analytical. And one of the most important things about money is the emotional behavior about money. So when you tend to focus only on analytical stuff, you are educating people on analytical stuff. But when you are trying to appeal to the emotion of people about money, then I think you have a far bigger chance to really engage with them. And by definition, you are going to be remarkable, because 95% of the industry is about the analytical part of money, which is necessary, of course, because otherwise we wouldn't be in business. But it isn't remarkable. And what I try to do is just educate people or give a little bit of inspiration about being remarkable, just by simply tying a little bit to the emotional part of our beautiful profession.
That makes perfect sense. What I want to ask is, obviously testing this stuff out in your business, your own business along the way, has been a big part of getting traction with it. Can you share with us some of the stories of maybe things that you tested really practically that went well, and maybe even a couple that you tested that didn't work so well?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that didn't go so well. For example, and I had this book, and I don't know, do you know Zig Ziglar?
Yeah,
do you know
Zig Ziglar. He's got a very distinctive way of speaking.
And I bought this book, and it's I think it's from the 70s, and this is him when he isn't among us anymore. But what he is selling, and he is, in my experience, he's one of the best, one of the inspiring coaches out there. And what he is basically saying is that he's sharing the secrets of closing the sale. And that is something what I have been testing in my financial planning service as well. So, for example, when you have conversations with people, the idea is that you should always be closing, the ABC method that's out there. So what I was practically testing is that when people are sharing a little bit of interest, then I would say, okay, so shall we do business, basically. And what I found out is that doesn't work. That doesn't work in any way, because what I've learned is that financial planning, it's a process. It's not as clear, because Zig Ziglar, with all respect, he was selling cookware, and then it might work. But with financial planning, it's a totally different ballgame. It's actually a sort of a process. And what, in my experience, helps more is by just having a remarkable conversation with people. And you think remarkable, how can you have remarkable conversations with people? Well, being remarkable is just asking other questions that people haven't experienced yet. So, for example, when I ask to people, what's important about your assets except for the returns and the costs, then what I'm basically saying, the whole industry is focusing on returns and on costs. But what I'm doing with this question is that I'm saying, let's put this aside for a moment, and let's talk about what's really important about money to you. And then you have a totally different conversation, and people haven't had this conversation. They don't have time for it anymore. They don't even have these conversations with their spouse. So we are asking remarkable questions, and you go deep on that, then they will have an experience they don't forget. And that's how the simplest way to be remarkable and engaging in this technological era.
So do you know what? I'm watching you do this, and while you're having that conversation, your body language has changed. You've stepped forward. I can just imagine that it would be an intense experience to have that kind of conversation with you.
I tend to be a little bit easier in the conversations, of course, but I'm enthusiastic about my point because I know it works. I've done it for years and years and years, and it just works.
So what do you think is, if we're talking about, planners who have remarkable conversations versus those who never step into that space, what do you think is the one thing that somebody could do in their next client meeting just to make a slight shift so they're maybe making that kind of connection with clients or essentially, going a bit deeper?
What I've learned is that when you ask these type of questions, what I experienced in my financial planning services is that I basically had some sort of fear for asking these questions. So, for example, I was a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with a wealthy entrepreneur. He just sold his business. He had an international business. He was living in South America. He sold his business, and he told me that he wanted to start another business. He was 55 years old or something.
Yep.
And he told about his children. Well, he never saw them really often because he was living in South America most of the time. So at some point I asked him, so how do you want to be remembered? And that got him to think, because, okay, how do I want to be remembered? And that's a totally different approach to a conversation than when you say, okay, let's start a new business. Okay, what do we need to do to start a new business? No, you get people to think about themselves in a way they haven't thought about themselves before. So when I asked this question, he was thinking about his children. And eventually, he decided not to go international. And I don't know if that was because that's just that one question. But at the end of the conversation, he said, Ronald, you really got me to think. And that's what I try to achieve in every conversation, to get people to think about themselves. Because when you do that, you will have value. And you don't, it doesn't have to do anything with finances. But when you get people to think about themselves, then they will remember you. They will think, this was an exceptional experience. I want this. Because people do not ever get this.
That's so
true. The fear of asking these questions is the biggest hurdle, I think, because that's what I experienced. How do you want to be remembered? Well, that's a bit a fluffy question. And, well, it was kind of scary for me to ask this type of question. But now when you get used to it, you don't want anything else, because these conversations are about the true things that people want, and not just about a little bit of extra return on their money, which is also important, of course, but don't forget that. But that's what I try to, try to make that a little bit more important in our profession, because it helps. It just helps.
It's awesome, man. I love this. I want to talk about content marketing, because I have a great question come through from Michael, and thank you for that. But I want to ask you one more question about this, if I may. Do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
Introvert.
Isn't that interesting? Because me too. And people would naturally think someone like you, who is happy to sit in front of people and would be an extrovert, but it's just often not the case. People who go deep in this company.
No, I'm an introvert. Really am. Yeah.
Same here. Let's I want to talk, because I reckon we could talk about your views of planning. We'll come back around to if we get a chance at the end. But the blog, if you haven't been to the blog, and I know that you've got some people who have obviously been there, it is just such a fresh breath of fresh air, and the thinking is so clear. And Ronald, I'm genuinely amazed that you don't think you write well, because I think you write better than most people when it comes to blogging. Let's talk about content marketing, because ultimately your readership has now grown significantly. You've built up an audience which is on the back of your writing. Let's talk about, since you started the blog, which was, what year was that?
2013.
2013. So you got 5 years under the bonnet.
Yeah.
What are the lessons you've learned from content marketing that might be relevant to somebody who's heading down that path right now?
I think it's important to have a sort of a hook. And what I mean with a hook is that people recognize me because my sort of tagline has always been, let's make financial planning matter. And this little sentence is actually what the whole blog is about, to make financial planning matter. It's not about numbers. It's not about analytical stuff. It's about other things, meaningful things. So I think you have to have a little bit of a hook or another view on the content that you're writing than other people have. It's also important, I believe, to focus on a niche, or a niche. I never know what's the right word.
I think the rules are, if you're speaking to English people, Australians, it's niche. If you're speaking to Americans, it's niche.
Okay. Yeah. Let's. You're in Australia. Let's talk about a niche.
Niche, mate.
And the niche, mostly when you talk about a niche, people think about, well, let's focus on dentists, or let's focus on airplanes, or pilots. Let's talk about entrepreneurs, or
yeah.
But what I think is more important is that you do not focus on a niche regarding to what people do, but I think it's far more interesting to focus on how people feel. Now, let me explain this, because, for example, I am a person who feels responsible for my family. So in everything I do, it's always in back of my mind is that, okay, I am responsible for my family. So when I do things, it has always everything a little bit to do with being responsible. So when you are writing your content to a niche who feels responsible for their family, for example, then they are engaged with you. So when you are focusing on the content, who is it for? They recognize it. But when you focus on the people who feel responsible, then they are engaged with you. Then they think, hey, this guy or this lady, he or she is like me. And then there's this click. So wow. That's what I want you to consider, is that you're not focusing on just what people do, but also how people want to feel. So there are a lot of emotions, of course. So when you are focusing, people who like status, for example. So when you are focusing on people who are a little bit of status driven, who feel they are important, well, let's write about that. There's nothing wrong with that. Just people are like that. And there are certain emotions. So that's what I always let people know. Consider that, because it's so easy to focus on a dentist or a pilot or whatever, but it's far more interesting to focus on, and that's exactly what I'm doing with my blog as well, because I'm focusing on people who want to be a little bit meaningful with their financial plans. It's not everything about becoming successful and more dollars and everything. No, they want to be meaningful for their clients. They want to add value all of the time, because they feel good about that. So when you are focusing your content on that part, then I think you have a far more chance to be successful with content marketing than we are doing just focusing on the niche, as I told you earlier.
That makes perfect sense. Can I ask that, by the way, that was absolute gold, Ronald. I actually took a lot from that. And I think from personally, everyone's aware that you need to target a market. That's one part of niching. The other part is a message that you put out there that, we believe this. I think Simon Sinek spoke a lot about, but the feeling thing is absolute gold, because if people empathize that you feel a certain way, your writing reads a certain way, and you're sort of taking a view of things and there's a feeling behind it, absolutely brilliant. Thank you for that. Let me ask, because Michael's put a great question up. If you're starting from ground zero and you want to build an audience, because it's all about the list.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of your strategy, which has been get the email, start the conversation. Other than getting Michael Kitces to publish your stuff, what are some other strategies for getting the numbers up quickly? Because what do they talk about? They say the dollar's in the list.
I can share my own story because I started out doing this and it works.
Okay.
So in the beginning, when I started my own financial planning service, my own business, I was coming from a wealth management firm, and well, to be honest, you have to. I'm a responsible person. You just learned that, so you have to have an income. It's that simple. So when I started as a entrepreneur, I was preparing, of course, for this step. So what I was doing, I was in the internet marketing space for a couple of years. So I was following people, and one of the people I was following was Jeff Walker.
Yep.
And he had a program called Product Launch Formula. Now you can go to his website, and you can learn. But in the end, you can buy a program for $2,000. And I don't expect you to do that, but I did. So I bought his program, and what he was sharing is a marketing of a content strategy. And this is basically the strategy. What you're doing is that you're making 3 pieces of content. And in my case, it was a video. So at that point in the Netherlands, there was the interest rates were low. And as a financial planner, I was advising people about how they could structure their wealth so that they can save a lot of taxes. That's in the end what it was for people. So what I did is that I made 3 pieces of content, 3 videos about that specific topic. Now, video is remarkable because in our space, you don't see many financial planners with videos. So that's number 1. You are remarkable when you're doing videos. Okay, it can always be email courses, can also work, can also be blog posts, but hey, focusing on video is more remarkable. So I made these videos, but the strategy behind the video, first of all, the overall strategy is give first, sell later. So, and that's in everything I do. I think Stuart is doing the same thing. Give first, sell later, so that people can know, like, and trust you. But the true strategy in this video is that you are showing your personality. And that's the trigger. Because when you are sharing your own story, it's really that simple, then people will connect with you. So what I was saying is that in this piece of video, I was explaining the stuff that saved people a lot of tax, but I was doing it with my own story. So people, they can look me in the eye, they can hear my voice, they can listen, and they get a connection with me. And so I had these 3 pieces of content, but I didn't have a list. So what I was doing is that I called an accountant and I said, I have magic for your clients, because when you are doing this, people will save a lot of taxes. And the goal is that I'm going to advise people, but in the end, you are going to do the work, because I'm not going to take over your clients or anything, but I'm just adding value to your clients. And he agreed. So what he did is that he shared the videos with his audience. And that was the start, because, of course, I asked people to subscribe to my list, because there should be something in for me as well.
Yeah, cool.
And I started building from then. So I used an existing audience from another person. And I think most financial planners have these accountants or CPAs or lawyers or anything in their network. So I use another people's network in the real world. So it's when regarding smart financial planning, I also did that with Michael Kitches, for example. So I didn't ask for that. He just did that, but that worked for me as well. That got the leverage that I wanted. But in real life, I just went to the accountant. I said, I have really great content about something you might not even know of, and would you take a look at it? And if you like it, will you share it with your audience? And he did that, and that was the start.
Brilliant.
So
love it. It's that simple. Perfect. Hey, let's
talk to
me about LinkedIn recommendations, because we spoke about it the other day. And if I remember rightly, you got a lot of traction with LinkedIn recommendations. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm testing it right now, actually, because it's what I always do, and I want to learn the lessons that I'm learning now in my want to put it in the Smart Financial Planning platform. And what I've been doing now is just asking for LinkedIn recommendations, but it doesn't stay there. So what and it surprises me, because recently I did a little job for Rabobank, and they hired me as a financial planner to advise some of their board members and the layer below that. And well, people were satisfied. And so I started asking recommendations on LinkedIn. And what happens is that people really are doing that. Almost everybody. I'm really surprised about that. But right now, as you go to my LinkedIn page, you see a couple of recommendations from just recent recommendations from people who are really the top members of the Rabobank.
Brilliant.
And what I'm going to do now, but I don't know the results yet, is that I'm going to thank them for the LinkedIn recommendation. So I'm going to send them a little gift with a little business card and a little a request to if I can be helpful to other people as well. And Rachel asked, "What's your idea of a little gift?" Well,
in Dutch, Rachel,
you might. I don't know if you heard it in the beginning of this webinar, but I live in Volendam. It's a fishing village. So what I'm going to send them is, and what's the word? Is it eel? I think it's eel.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a little package of eel, and it's vacuumed. It's 10 euros or something. Yeah. So I'm going to send them with a question to share my business card, but also if I can contact them again so that I can be helpful. Yes, paling. Yeah, yeah, that's the one. If I can share it, if they know people who might be interested in my service, and I know they are a little bit of fans about my service. So when they do not expect this, and it's a fun gift. It's nice. Yeah. So, and again, I don't know the results yet, but I'm going to test it. And I would like to share the results if Stuart invites me again for another webinar or something.
I would love to. I'd love to share those results. Glenn Doherty, who's on the line here, Glenn's had an amazing sort of, the Dutch do love their fish. I love herring. I love the whole process of eating herring. But anyway, Glenn, a long-time reader of your blog, he's been making incredible progress with his online, and he's asked a really great question because Glenn's a real tester. He's playing with a lot of things. I've just got so much time for what he's doing. You want to know what topics were you most read when you were blogging to consumers as opposed to planners? Sounds like he's been following you for a while, as you probably guess.
Yeah. The things that are a little bit of contradictionary. So again, what I'm always trying to focus on is being remarkable. And I think the best part, you see a lot of short tips online. So they are mostly related to new rules, new tax rules and everything. But I tend to stay away from that part all of the time because there's so many content on that part already.
Yep.
So what I'm doing is adding a little bit of psychological sauce to the content, and also to be remarkable about that. So to be remarkable, you have to be a little bit of a reader, I think, because when you are, for example, I read many books, and when you think of something, hey, this could be interesting for an idea that I'm already having, then the writing starts to take off. And one of the things that helped me the most, for example, and I told Stuart before this webinar, I'm now writing a post about why people do not care about return on investments. Now, when you are hearing this, I think, then you think, why people do not care about return on investments? That's totally nonsense. But when I tell you about the story behind that headline, and you always have to have a remarkable headline, because if you do not have that, then people will not read it. It's that simple. So you have to be a little bit of a controversial one to get people's attention in this noisy world. So please, and when you have a great headline when it feels icky. So when you really have, you think, oh, can I put this online? Then you have a good headline. You should remember that. So because the headline, people forget about the headline when they read the story. So when you have a good story, they have forgotten about the headline. They think about the story. But again, let's talk about this blog post. What I'm writing about is that when you ask people about what's your return on assets management, and they say 8%, wow. And when you say 7%, wow, that's a great, and 9%, and 6%, and 5%, it's a great asset. And the difference, well, they don't care about the difference most of the time. The people I talk to, when they have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 4, well, there's a minor difference, of course, because they're related to the past years. But in the end, it's an okay return on assets under management. But what missing there, and that's what's applying to you as a financial planner, is I have to earn an X% assets under management to blah, 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 to reach my financial goal. They miss the goal. So when people don't care about their assets under management, it's about they really got a clear goal when it comes to their money. So it's a perfect teaser, actually, for your financial planning service. So this is a totally another take on assets under management. So when you are writing, please do not write about the analytic stuff, because that's everywhere. People, your knowledge, your expertise is assumed. So people already trust you that you have a lot of knowledge. You don't have to prove it. People already know it. Because you're a financial planner. You're a certified financial planner, and probably a lot of other titles. So people know you are a trusted advisor with a lot of knowledge, with a lot of experience, because you are a financial planner in the first place. So what you have to do is to be non-analytical and to focus on the content that's a little bit different than everything other. And the best way to do that is to read books and to read a bit of a psychology. That's the best nuggets out there, and tie that to your financial planning. That had worked for me.
TED Talks are really good as well. There's Dan Gilbert does some great ones. Yep. There's some really great. If you haven't got time to read the books, grab a TED Talk, listen to it in the car, because that'll give you some really, really juicy sort of insight into the way things think. Hemant, I hope I'm pronouncing your name wrong, and if I am, I'm really sorry. But Hemant's got a great question. Can we hear your view on empathy?
Yeah. Yeah, my view on empathy. I think empathy is the distinguisher in our space, because especially, I don't know in Australia, but especially in the United States of America, there's this rise of the robo-advisors. And you see Betterment, you see Wealthfront, you see all the online startups, and well, they are pretty successful with their business. And people are always afraid, well, will I ever exist in a couple of years? Because they are taking over the market. And what I don't believe in that, because I think you can be remarkable by just being empathetic. And what I mean with being empathetic is what I actually told you a little bit earlier, is that, you see, you as a person, you have eyes that can see, you have ears that can listen. And that's something what software, databases, and websites simply cannot do. So I believe when you are being this person and you are able to make an experience out of the relationships and the connections with your clients, then you will easily stand out when it comes to a little bit of competition from the online space, because we have an advantage by simply being human. Because that's something what they cannot offer. And we are social creatures. So we engage with each other. So I think if we focus on that part, then we do not have to be afraid for any robo-advisor.
I want to just add that Kevin Kelly, when he was interviewed by Tim Ferriss a couple of years ago, he was asked this great question, which was, if you're a business out there and you're worried about artificial intelligence, of which robo-advice is, where's the cutoff? What's the point at which you should be worried? And he said, it's really simple. If you're offering a service or a product, it's a commodity and it can be replicated. But if you're offering an experience, then they can't touch you, because they just can't do an experience. So to your point, Ronald, if you're leaving people out of that appointment and they've had an emotional experience, or you've asked questions and that you've helped them to think in a way that they haven't done before, which is usually, if you're accessing emotions, it's empathetic by definition, then you're delivering possibly the human experience.
Yeah, it's really that simple, and people often don't realize it. But well, we as a human, you have this ultimate knowledge at the financial planner because we are the best educated advisors in the industry. So it's such a shame when you cannot use this knowledge on people when you're not engaging with them. So, and you have to be conscious about it because we aren't trained to be human. It's a little bit of a strange saying, of course, but I think you know what I mean, because we are trained to be this analytical person. And that's necessary, but it's not sufficient anymore. Not if you want to compete with the online space, because I believe the assets under management will be, or it might even already be, it is a commodity. So Betterment, they are offering assets under management for an annual fee of 0.2%. Well, that sounds like a commodity to me because it's all about price.
It is. I think the other thing I just want to add there is this idea that money is not attached to emotion. It's crazy. Money is one of the most emotional things people have. It causes them, like if you've ever had parents fight over money, or people have self-esteem issues because of money, and people who feel a certain way because they have money and feel a certain, money is one of the most emotional aspects. So I think as an advisor, if you could almost say, I deal with people's money, but money is not about money. Money's it was always about something else. I think that's the way to differentiate.
Yeah, I think this and what delivers an extra experience for your clients is when you talk about meaning in their life. So if you have clients who are baby boomers, they usually have money. Most of the baby boomers have money, but most are searching for something because they have they have worked really, really hard. That generation is a generation that worked really, really hard for their money.
Sacrifice
a lot. But now they are retired, and so they are searching for something. And I had conversations with these people who are searching for a little bit of meaning with their money. So, for example, I had a entrepreneur sold his business. Well, I don't know if your target audience, but in my target audience, he had 3-4 million, and he had no children. And he said, "Well, I really don't know what to do, actually." So this wasn't about money at all. This was about helping him deciding what to do next.
Yeah.
And that's also something you can focus on, because especially if you have that target audience. So with the younger people, I don't think it's going to work because they want to be successful and work hard. But with that generation, that's a different ballgame because they already experienced it. They are in a different phase of their lives. So they don't get their life happiness out of an extra percent on their assets under management. They want something extra. And if you focus on being more meaningful for them, helping them to decide what they're going to do, that's another take on the financial planning space. But you are, as a financial planner, in my experience, you are the best suited person for that, because you are trustworthy by definition. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a financial planner. You have experience.
Yeah.
The only thing is, do you also have the capacity to engage on that level with that type of clients?
Love it.
But I think if you focus on that, if you have a target audience, which is that generation, you can add a lot of value by focusing on being meaningful to them and help them to find meaning in their life. And that, again, I know this is a little bit of fluffy, I know, but it has value. It has not a net value, but it has value for people.
It's the glue that holds it together. It's the small stuff, and the funny thing, the small stuff is often the big stuff, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I had to ask you personally, have you read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah, I did.
Right, but if anyone's not read that, Viktor Frankl created a new branch of psychotherapy. He actually believed that it wasn't about trauma; it was actually about getting clear on what your purpose was in life, and interpreting what's happening around you through the lens of what's the story that is going to bring meaning to whatever's happening to me. And the thing that makes his book more powerful is the guy's a concentration camp survivor. And he spent his life studying why some people made it through the camp and turned it into their most, powerful thing moving forward, and how some just didn't survive. So, and not only a great book, but just an incredible story of which there's very few similar.
Yeah, basically, he was saying I didn't have anything, but still I had meaning. And that's how I survived.
Exactly. Dude, I'm just spotted the time. This has been great. I've just keep talking for hours and hours. We should do this again. But tell people a bit, two things. Where's the business? Where are you at now in terms of the number of people on your list, the number of clients you're working with, the clients you are working with? And also, people want to sort of connect with you further or get involved in what you're doing now. Give us a bit of an overview of what you're working on.
Well, right now I have about 2,800 people who subscribed to my email list for a Smart Financial Planner email list. And to be honest, I haven't been putting out content for my blog that much recently because I was really focusing on the content for the platform. I want to focus on the people who are also already inside the platform.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing lately, and it is a pretty great library right now with a lot of videos, a lot of swipe copy stuff, and also a little bit of inspiration. I also have business book summaries, but not really summaries, more actionable tips from business books which are applied to our financial planning service. So that's where I'm at with Smart Financial Planner right now, and I have about 80 members in there. And the next step, and what I'm working on now, is that because the thing is, it's not really it doesn't really have a facilitation to connect with each other. So right now I'm working on an app with where I can put in the content, but where also people can talk to each other and connect with each other, because I think that's the missing sauce right now. It should be a real community. So that's what I'm working on right now, and I'm going to launch that in June or something. And but I do not want to lose touch with the real financial planning. So what I'm doing is that I'm not a wealth manager. I'm a 100% financial planner, I always say. So what I do is that I advise people. Sometimes it's a one-time experience people want, but I also have a subscription-based client base who I serve and who I meet 2-3 times a year, and leading them to financial freedom. That's what I'm trying to do, and I think I'm pretty good on my way. And I got these clients. Most of my clients actually are from the beginning. So the 3 videos I shared with the accountant. So they want an extra advisor next to their accountant. So, and that works perfectly well.
Love it. And the courses are on smartfinancialplanner.com?
Yeah, of course, on smartfinancialplanner.com. So people can, they go to courses, and what I'm having right now is a 30-day free trial. You have to leave your credit card, but after 1 month you pay $59 a month. But if you don't want that, I have a free email course, no credit card, so you can leave your email address, and then you get a couple of emails from me about the mistakes you don't know you're making about people want financial planning.
Awesome. Love this. one final thing, because I spotted the time and I reckon you've got to go and start your day. I want to ask one more question. If people come off the back of this webinar, one of the things is people come to this stuff, they get full of ideas, they get inspired, and sometimes people don't do anything with it. If you were going to recommend to the people who are still here or people who are watching this months later, what's the one thing that you think you'd like them to come off the back of this and do that's going to help them start that path towards being a better financial planner, being a better online content marketer, whatever it is? What's the one thing? Just putting you on the spot, Ronald.
Yeah. Well, in terms of strategy, I would say always remind, give first, sell later, because I don't know if you used to, but that has worked for me. I didn't expect anything in return, but the law of reciprocity is working. So give first and people will come to you. So in everything you do, just try to add a little bit of value to what you're doing without expecting something in return. So that's the strategy, and yeah, it's simple, but it's I think that's the lesson that, well, most people know but don't do. So when it comes to content marketing, it's always a little bit of hurdle. So why should you start, and how do you start? Well, just start. So when I take a look at my blog post, the first blog post, I remember it's The Power of Aha. That was the title, the headline. Well, that's not a great headline. But when I take a look at it now, I think, oh my God, did I write this? But I started, and look where I am.
Cool. Hear that? I want to get some blogs out there. Rachel wants to know, can we quote you?
Of course.
Ronald, this has been awesome. Do me a favor. Thank you so much for sort of getting up early or staying on late. Type in the box, because I like the feedback, and I'm sure Ronald would appreciate some feedback. What's been the valuable, insightful, inspirational, or useful thing that we've spoken about today? Personally, for me, it was that feeling thing. That really got it for me, because I tend to be quite analytical and systems thinking. So being able to go, hold on, what's the feeling I'm aiming for here? Who do I also want to track who feels a certain way about the topic? That's really useful. Michael says to leverage other people's audiences. Dude, Michael, you've got some videos, or it doesn't have to be video, by the way. It can be articles if that's your thing. It can be worksheets if that's your thing, but yeah, love it. That's awesome, Michael. That's very relevant. I'd love to know what else. Hemant, Michael's just, Glenn, I'd love to know, what's the one thing? Hemant's providing a remarkable experience. I love this remarkable thing, because if you think the essence of the word remarkable means able to be remarked on. So if you're doing something that other people are going to go, you know what? I got this thing in the post, or I got sent this email. I don't know how they did that. Or, I got sent this congratulations. The wow factor. In other words, if you've got to a point where someone else is going to comment to their friend or a colleague about something that happened, you've hit remarkable. Glenn says, be more meaningful to clients. Focus on being remarkable. Love that. Got traction with that. Elizabeth, we'd love to know from you. Pop in the box. What have you taken from today as well? Jitendra, definitely want to hear from you. Empathy, finding meaning. I never thought about that. Yeah. You know what? If it wasn't dollars and cents, it would be, actually, there's a documentary on Netflix now. It's about a place in the far eastern Europe where they don't use money, they use potatoes. And I bet you, everybody's sitting there going, oh, I just wish I could have more potatoes. What would I do with my life if I had more potatoes? It's not about the vodka's a good point. Jitendra says a different perspective of niche. I totally agree with that, Trina. This has been you. That's exactly the thing I've taken out of it. Ronald, what's next? What's up for you? What's for the rest of your Thursday?
I'm going to finish a blog post today.
Love it.
So I'm looking really forward to it, because I have all these ideas in my head and I want to put it out there.
All right. Well, won't keep you anymore. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your patience with the technical thing. Would love to do this again at some point. But thanks to everyone who's joined us. Ronald, thank you firstly for today. Thanks for sharing your stuff. And by the way, thanks for being just an amazing person to shoot the breeze with. I wish everybody could see some of the conversations I've had with Ronald offline, because he is exactly who you see here today. Anyway, let's leave it there. Everybody have a great day. Have a great evening. The recording will be up on this page very, very soon, actually almost instantly. Don't forget, if you haven't checked out smartfinancialplanner.com, head over there because the blog's great. And if you want to turbocharge this stuff, check out the courses, because frankly, $59 a month, it seems incredibly cheap. Cool. That's it. Ronald, have a great day, everybody. This feels like it's done. So on that note, do you want the last word, Ronald?
I would say, let's make financial planning matter.
There you go. Done. Take care. See you soon.
Okay. Hey, bye-bye.